Good to see all of you. Thank you so much for coming here to remember Albert today. Albert was 4 years older than me, so I don't remember a lot about his youth, except he always had friends around him, and he was our big brother, whom we called by his middle name, Sidney. He was a handsome teenager in the 60s with bleached blonde hair and a crooked smile, who, like most teenage boys, liked fast cars and hanging out with friends. He married his high school sweetheart, and they had a daughter, Amy, whom he adored. But Albert was a troubled young man, and our family did not seem able to reach him. Our mother tried everything she knew to encourage and support him, but he was on a path that none of us could comprehend. Ultimately, Albert was diagnosed with the mental illness, paranoid schizophrenia. Albert's unpredictable and sometimes frightening behavior created many problems for him and for the people who cared about him. He couldn't hold a job, his marriage ended, and he became estranged from his friends and family. For years, Albert lived at home with our mother, who tried to take care of him. As she became elderly, and he had the reoccurring problems typical of schizophrenics not wanting to take their medication, she reluctantly placed him in a rest home near her. Mama would visit Albert every Sunday and frequently bring him home for Sunday dinner and holidays. He always loved coming home. When you can no longer care for a disabled, mentally ill adult in your home, you quickly realize there is very little available within your financial means that offers the care you would want them to have or feels comfortable for them or for you. Consequently, the mentally ill typically end up on our city streets as the homeless. Albert was blessed not to be homeless. At the time Albert was diagnosed 40 years ago, it was socially unacceptable to talk about mental illness, let alone admit that a family member was afflicted. Our family tried to keep quiet about it and endure the shame and fear that we experienced living with Albert as a husband, a father, a son, a brother, who didn't think or behave like the rest of us. There was constant grief and loss for the person we had once known. Since the 70s, our culture has made great progress acknowledging all forms of mental illness, from depression to bipolar disorder to schizophrenia. Yet, even though most of us know of at least one family with a mentally ill or mentally challenged member, I think we would have to admit that mental illness still carries too much shame and lack of support and understanding and compassion. I was in the lobby of my bank recently when an obviously mentally ill man came in to make a withdrawal. He was standing at the teller right next to me. When he left the lobby, the bank manager brought out a can of air freshener and began spraying it in every area in which the man had been, all the way up to the lobby door. She was laughing and making fun of the problem in front of several bank clients as the bank teller, who had done his transaction, brought out disinfectant wipes to clean her hands. I try not to judge their behavior, but I have to ask myself, now, did this man really have more germs or smell any worse than any other person who walks in off the street into their bank lobby? Or was this typical societal reaction to the mentally ill? I have given a lot of thought over the years about Albert and his mental illness, especially since my mother asked me to make sure he was taken care of when she passed away almost 8 years ago. There was a time when I felt a lot of anger about Albert's condition. Why him? Why my family? Why me? One of the things I have come to realize, however, is it does not serve anyone for me to be angry about or to judge the life path of Albert. For all I know, Albert's world to him was a great adventure, filled with intrigue and danger and courage. As far as I can tell, he always saw himself as the brave hero fighting what he perceived as evil in his world. It was not a world that I or any of his family could or would want to join him in. But I do not recall him ever saying he wished he was not in it himself. Maybe with new eyes, more forgiveness, and a less fearful perspective, we can learn to embrace a more open and spiritual view of mental illness, and consequently know how better to serve it. After Albert was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in January 2010 and given only 2 to 4 months to live, his daughter, her husband and children, and I began visiting him as often as we could. To our amazement, he lived 18 months. And during that whole time, Albert was mentally sound. He did not act, speak, or seem mentally ill. Now, some may say that the doctors had finally hit on the right medications for him after 40 years of trying. I believe it was God's gift to Albert and his family to be able to spend together his last months in healing peace and love and acceptance. Hopefully, this will be what we remember about our father, our grandfather, our brother, and perhaps through our relationship with him, we can help shine the light more brightly on the continuing struggle for all of us to understand, accept, and support the mentally ill. Thank you all for being here today to honor Albert, and thank you for allowing me to speak to a very difficult, but what I believe is an important subject. May God bless all of you, and may God bless Albert Sidney Barnes.